So you did it to yourself this time. It's AP's fault.
No, this time I'm not keeping it in. I'm going to cut it out. And they're going to go, oh, AP's very professional.
That's not fair.
Hello, and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where I talk about narrative in film, television, and in books. Keep it together, AP.
It's entirely AP's fault this time.
Right. Welcome to A Critical Dragon. Let's get this started. I am joined by Dr. Philip Chase. We're going to discuss The Wheel of Time, the TV show, episode 4 of season 1.
Yes.
Hi, Philip. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, AP. It is wonderful to be here, and I'm excited because we got a really pretty good response to our first discussion on episodes 1 through 3. I was pretty surprised, actually, because everybody's talking about the show, but there's a lot of excitement, and people were interested, and some people at least said we were compared to some eminent film critics in the comments, right?
Weren't we compared to Muppets?
Oh, yeah.
As well.
Statler and Waldorf. Which I thought was incredibly apt and also kind of a cool compliment, too. So.
Yeah, we're two grumpy old men who have a gripe about things. And that's fine. It's like both of us, I think, want the show to be really, really good. We want the show to be a massive success because if the show's a success, more stuff gets adapted, and stuff maybe that we prefer more. No, I can't speak for you, but I can certainly say for me, I enjoy The Wheel of Time well enough, but it's not the series that I would love to see on the screen. But so episode 4. Now, let me start just with a couple of very, very brief points here. Episodes 1 to 3, I had an issue with the very quick way that they were moving through so much, and a lot of it felt like I think I compared it to TikTok editing, that it was all these very, very quick scenes.
Yeah.
And what I really liked about episode 4 was part of it slowed down, and oddly enough, it's a part that the parts that it really slowed down for aren't in the books. They were written for the episode. And I think if that is a signal of what they're going to do with the rest of the season and then the rest of the series as it continues, then that's exactly what we want to see. It was the initial first 3 episodes. Think of it, we thought of it as that sort of introduction, a prologue. And they were trying to get all of the information out as quickly as possible to go, here you go, here's your foundation. Now, let's start the show. So this felt almost like the proper first episode, to me at least. And I actually enjoyed that because we got all the stuff out of the way in the first 3. And now we're set up with essentially 3 different hero journeys.
Yes. Yeah. 3 threads. Yeah. So that's true. And I consider myself a fan of the Wheel of Time books, the series. I have my issues with the books, and I would have, made certain suggestions if I could have whispered in Robert Jordan's ear back when he was writing them, but
Beowulf, more Beowulf. We want lots of Beowulf.
We had to work in Beowulf here somewhere, didn't we? So, but anyway, I like the books well enough, and I had similar problems with the first 3 episodes. The editing to me was the weak part of it, and it was just a lot of abrupt transitions, a lot of just throwing me around here and there, and very little, if any, pausing to let me feel immersed and absorbed and to connect with the characters. Episode 4 gave me that. I think episode 4 is far and above the best episode I've seen so far. If it's an indication of what the show is going to do, then I'm very happy, because for me it was the quieter moments between characters. They've done some interesting pairings in episode 4. So you saw, for example, even within the different, there's 3 threads that
Mhm.
we're going to discuss. But even within those threads, there were pairings. So we saw, for example, a Gwen with what's the fellow's name? The
Aram.
young guy, Aram. That's right. So a Gwen with Aram, and you had Perrin with Aram's grandmother. Right? They were paired off at certain
Ela,
points.
Ela.
Maybe. I think that's probably right. Yeah, yeah. So wow, good memory. So anyway, yeah. So that happened elsewhere too. I think there were great moments between Nynaeve and Lan, for example. That was a nice, beginning to see a nice pairing there as well. So I really appreciated that, as well as there were moments with Tom and Rand, for example, when they were, and these were all quiet moments of discussion. We didn't get that in the first 3 episodes. These were moments when, but the moment that stole the show for me was when Aram's grandmother, what was her name again?
Isla, I think.
Isla. Okay, we'll say Isla.
No,
When
see, I think one of the things that people don't realize is we only watch it the once. And
right,
it's not
yeah,
like we sat watching it and made a whole load of notes. Like the
no,
first 3 episodes we watched once, and then it was, why did we talk about this? It was like, oh, okay, well, we just talk about it.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
I should have thought, oh, well, we're going to do another talk. But I had the same attitude of, well, I'll watch it and then we'll just have a chat about what we
have a
saw,
chat.
instead of doing the smart thing of watching it and writing notes and preparing all of this stuff. This is actually just our impression of watching it once.
Totally
So,
reacting. Plus, it's been years and years since I read the books, so I will probably slip here and there. But anyway, I thought the conversation between her and Perrin was the show stealer for me. There was a beautiful conversation between the two of them that was quite moving. I thought the actor playing her did a beautiful job in that scene, and I thought Perrin did a great job just reacting to that story as well. There were moments of that I was surprised how touched I was watching this episode after the first 3 and thinking, okay, I'm going to stick with it. I have my problems. It's better than some awful fantasy shows that we've seen in the past. It's could be better. But this episode really, I feel like I'm more on board now, especially if they're going to continue in this vein. So I was happy.
and actually, one of the moments that I really liked in the show was Moraine talking to Logan. To Logan.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Again.
that
Yeah.
that was where you really like that quiet moment about defeating violence through
Yeah.
spreading peace. That's the only way you can do it, and the revenge that you have for a violent act is to spread peace. And
Yeah.
it's a very powerful message, because it's not what we think of in terms of revenge. It's not what we think of in terms of vengeance. We think of exacting revenge and inflicting punishment. And just to see that philosophy espoused, which is obviously very important for the way of the leaf, the Tuatha.
Right. Right.
Tuatha. It comes from an Irish word, and I always mispronounce it.
Well,
Embarrassing.
and the Tua de Danann is the Irish word for the kind of fairy, the fae, but people always mispronounce it. It's not Tuatha, it's Tua. You don't say the second part of that if you're pronouncing it in Irish, I think. So,
Yeah.
But anyway,
I really don't speak an awful lot of Irish.
yeah. But no, it's interesting because I think those conversations did a lot of the work of the narrative and building the characters. That conversation with Perrin is really central to his arc, his struggle that we talked about before between the warrior in him, the beast in him, and the human in him. And so this way of the leaf thing is something that he both kind of recoils at. Why wouldn't you defend yourself, But also I think it has a certain appeal to him as well, as someone who's been through the recent trauma. And of course, in the show, he even he killed his wife accidentally, but still, I mean, that the nonviolent path would have been a way to avoid the guilt that he's going through now. Or in the case of the conversation between Rand and Tom, that's great story building there. That conversation where Tom tells him about his nephew and how his nephew went crazy when he had started showing signs of being a male channeler, and then they gentled him, and then he took his own life because he couldn't live after that. I thought those were obviously, these are things from the book, but I thought they were very successful in making the characters more alive for me.
And well, one of the things that I find actually interesting about this is that the three moments that really stand out to me are that conversation with Perrin, the conversation that Tom has with Rand, and the conversation that Moiraine has. In all three instances, it's where you have a more senior, experienced, mature actor rather than any of the younger heroes, and that it's not a disservice to the younger actors. Like,
No.
but these other actors have experience and gravitas, and they can sell a scene. They arrest your attention. When Moiraine slips in that moment and said, you know, before they get here, you're like, we're only gonna have a short time to talk. What she manages to convey in that conversation, the subtleties, the nuance, and in the conversation with Logan, the two of them are magnetic. When you have Tom with that gravitas and telling the story, it's arresting your attention and focusing on it.
Yeah.
And when we have another classic actor, quite famous actor over here, actually, playing the grandmother figure, doing this again, it's selling the emotion and the undertone of the scene, and you're paying attention to it. And it's a different aspect of the acting that I think came through very well. And I think because they took that additional time to have those moments to slow it down and not focus on what is the next big narrative event. Now, they still had, you know, your big action sequence and lots of things exploding and magic being used, which, you know, is not the thing that I was particularly interested in. But those character moments were the things that sold me on the show, because it convinced me that they were trying to tell a story and not just move through things happening.
Exactly. Yeah. Because that's how I felt with the first three episodes, that they were just trying to shove the biggest, important, most, and it felt like they needed to tell what they were trying to tell, and they needed twice the amount of time to do it well and to give us this moments, these quieter moments. I'll tell you one that I thought was good between two younger actors was the scene between Egwene and Aram when they were having their discussion while Perrin was off talking, having his moment. But that was a scene where I think the actor playing Aram is doing a fantastic job. Very playful. He's got really dynamic eyes and just a great presence, I think. But Egwene does a great job in that scene as well. And you could get this sense of Egwene as a character, this young person full of potential who is kind of yearning to see the world, to explore her world and who can she be and all these other things. And she's a person who's on the verge of seeing great things and doing great things. You get that sense of that potential in her in that scene. And he perceives that there's some guy, you know, somewhere or other who is because there's a bit of a, you know, there's a nice bit of there's some attraction there between
frisson. Would a frisson between them?
Yeah, I mean, there's something there. There's a spark there, I think, and I like that. I like that they built that tension into that scene as well. But he has the grace and the honesty to say, "Well, who's this guy anyway?" But it was an interesting moment for me. I thought it was just well done, nice dynamic in the scene, and just gave me some hope that they're going to do a really good job going forward with the character development.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's in some respects I'm showing my age in that I like those quieter moments. I like the moments of dialogue that is doing something and telling a story and having these emotions and undercurrents running through it. And one of the structural things I thought that they did that was very, very interesting. So obviously there was the whole controversy over Perrin killing his wife at the start.
Right.
And now we have the mirror of that, of Perrin talking to an older woman who has lost her daughter. And there's this mirroring of Perrin being caught between these two female points that are now going to be the dominant poles of the pull of the philosophy on him.
Yeah.
And it was a really nice mirroring, because they could have written that scene to have a male character deliver that speech to Perrin, but they didn't. They had a female character.
Yeah.
And it's, I know people are still upset about it and still upset about it, about the whole fridging thing, but the whole reason fridging was a bad trope was because it was disrespectful to women, and it was used in a misogynist sense, and it was all about the male story. but
Right.
you have to take it in the context of the entire narrative. This is not a male narrative. They've been very clear about that. This is a story of all of the heroes, male
Right.
and female. And
Right.
it leads me into a point that I think is quite interesting. Obviously, for people who have read the books, you know who the Dragon Reborn is. And
Right.
I believe there is some online chatter about, oh, what if they change the dragon? You go, stop worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. Now
Yeah.
think about it from the perspective. Imagine you're in the world. Imagine even if you're an Aes Sedai and you've heard this prophecy for centuries that the dragon's going to be reborn and they're going to be a man, but it's a prophecy. It's not written in stone. It's not.
Hmm.
What if they were wrong? What if it got mistranslated at some point? You know that it's going to happen. You know the dragon's going to arrive. You know the dragon has this potential. You think you're fairly sure. You're almost convinced it's going to be a man,
Right.
but you don't know because, believe it or not, the Aes Sedai didn't get to read the books. And so they don't know what's going to happen. So if we think about it from being in their world, yeah, there's a prophecy handed down. This person's going to be reborn and lead us all into paradise.
Yeah. Well, so I think for the just to add a little bit to that, because the people who have read the books know that the Dragon Reborn, a lot of that is about the person who's going to come back and cleanse saidin, which is the male channeling power, as it's talked about in the books. Whereas the women use saidar. These are the two halves of the one power. The one power is gendered. So for in the context of the books, what people are saying is it has to be a male because it's about cleansing saidin, right? And blah blah blah. But
that logic doesn't hold up, by the way.
Okay, well, in the books or in for the show.
But saying because saidar is tainted,
saidin
or
is
saidin.
Yeah.
Because saidin is tainted, you have
Yeah.
to use saidin to get rid of the taint. And you go, well, no, you don't. You could create an effect with saidar that takes the taint from saidin, or
Sure.
whatever way around it is.
Yeah, why not? So this is an adaptation. And so this is kind of how I feel. I'm actually fine with the ambiguity they've introduced, that it could be one of, well, they talk about Logain. It seems to be a possibility. And now at the end of episode 4, wow, Nynaeve is sure looking like the Dragon Reborn. And they've talked, of course, about Egwene and then the 3 guys, Matt and Perrin and Rand, and they built it up with all of them to some degree or other, because with Matt, you have the conversation again with Tom and Rand, and Tom is saying, yeah, it looks like Matt is he's starting to channel there, and this is where it's going to go, and we need to protect him. And so they're kind of nudging everywhere a little bit, I think, and I'm actually cool with that. And I'm trying to think from the perspective of someone who hasn't read the books, and to have this mystery of which one is it, it's cool. I think it's a great thing that they're doing. I'm fine with it.
But even with, I like it from the perspective of watching the show. The show is going to be its own thing. Yes, it is an adaptation of the books, but even then, someone going, oh, but he's the wrong age. He's 3 years the wrong age. You go, oh, really? They calculated the prophecy down to the day, did they? Like no one forgot to carry a 1, and you go, that ambiguity when the fate of the world is hanging on it, and you're going to go, oh, he's definitely too old by a couple of months. That's what you're going to hang. That you're going to go, hang on a sec. They're all in. Oh, look, they're all in with about 5 years of each other. That's pretty close in when you're dealing with 3,000 years within the same 5-year period. These things happen. You go, that's pretty damn close for a mystical prophecy. The will and the returning of the souls isn't a mechanical thing that you go, oh yeah, you've served your 9,000 days, you now are spit back out again. That's not how it works. They have faith, they have belief, they have a prophecy, they think it's going to happen. The signs are all there.
Right.
But it's reading portents in the sky and going, we think it's that one. It seems to fit all of these
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
but the fate of the world is hanging on this. What if you're wrong?
And it's really great how we share the uncertainty of, say, Moraine, who's really trying to get to the bottom of this. And that conversation with Logain is so powerful because she comes there with a certain part of her mind open to the idea that he could be the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah, and
And
that's I. For me, it made her a much more interesting character because until now, well, like half of it, she's been lying there sick, going, "Oh, I'm dying." You're like, "Yes, Frodo, Morgul knife wound." Um, but before that, she was imperious and powerful, which again is an aspect of her character, and it was important to establish that. But
uh-huh.
now we actually get to see more of her. What is her mission? And going in and seeing her walk up to him, and it's not about, I'm going to take you down for doing this. It's, are you? Talk to me, convince me. Because if
Right.
you are, I will be your ally. But
Yeah,
if
that
you're
was
not,
cool. You could sense she would go against the rest of her sisters if need be, if he convinced her. You also learn about her in this episode when she's not even on the screen because a lot of the other characters have conversations about her, right? And you learn about her past, having the puppy that she's not supposed to have. When you get the sense that she was a bit of a maverick, a bit of a rebel. And the way others talk about the way Leandrin hates her, obviously, right, and tries to scheme
well,
about her.
I don't think it's necessary that Leandrin hates her. It's, I think,
Mm,
that's part and parcel of Leandrin's character. She's dismissive of anyone who has not read Aja. But even
yeah.
then, and this is something I liked about the show. They don't make Leandrin just a villain because
No, yeah,
it's okay. We should just gentle him, and you can see she's passionate. She has a reason for wanting the one power ripped out of men, and it seems
right.
very venomous and very aggressive. But
It's
they go,
aggressive. Yeah.
but they say no, we're still going to take him, and she agrees.
But she sees Moraine as a rival. That's clear,
Yeah,
especially
but
when you see her trying to kind of slither into Nynaeve's good graces. And I love Nynaeve's reaction to that, by the way. Which is like, okay, go ahead, let's have our little question answer session. And then she leaves, Land shows up, and she's like, that woman's a snake,
but how much of that is that they can feel a level of power in Nynaeve and go, she would make our Adja stronger, and you get a sense now of the politics of
Oh yeah.
any sort of
Yeah.
institution like that.
It's
I,
great.
I
It's great development. It's great story development. Yeah.
I am absolutely convinced that Robert Jordan spent a lot of time around academics
You
with the
think?
viper pit that are the Aes Sedai.
Departmental politics, forget about Aes Sedai, man.
They're amateurs.
Yeah, yeah.
But the scene I loved about Leandra, up until that moment when the other Aes Sedai dies, I've
Uh-huh.
forgotten which one.
Alina,
One of the Green
no.
Movers.
Is it
Was it
Alina or not Alina? Arena, Arena, Arena,
Arena?
Arene, Arene,
What?
something like that. Yeah.
But he killed my sister. So gone is the politics. Gone is the I'm red Aja and you're green Aja and you're not. Gone is any of that thing. That's the
Yeah.
moment where it's you killed my sister.
And they are literally unified there in power. They link to each other.
And
Yeah.
she demands that they link then, and they all just immediately agree because it
Right.
has gone too far.
Yeah.
They can't let this stand. But you saw that she was controlling herself, even though clearly she wanted to gentle him from the beginning. She believes that is the right thing to do. It's not that she goes, "Oh, I just enjoy doing it." It's she thinks it's the right thing to do.
Mm,
Well, and this is what I took from it, at least.
uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
she was in control. She wasn't going to do anything without the permission of the others. But as soon as she blames him for the murder of an Aes Sedai,
Right.
all bets are off. This guy's going down. And yet, to be perfectly honest, was he really responsible?
That's a good question. Yeah. It was, the one warder who stuck his
No,
axes in.
no. A warder causes the thing to happen. And then the other Aes Sedai didn't shield herself in order to shield the other two.
Right.
Two acts were required for that Aes Sedai to die.
Yeah. Yeah, it was tragic for sure. But it's interesting too how the Logain thread has been moved forward here, because that doesn't happen, I'm pretty sure, until it's much further in the books. So this is a character who, probably because of compression, which is a good thing that they absolutely need to do in an adaptation. I like how they have taken Logain, made him more prominent early in the series. I think his role isn't developed like it was here. He isn't gentled in even, I can't remember because it's been years, but I think a lot of what we're seeing on screen is not actually in the books. I know he's gentled in the books, and then all that, but his narrative happens much later, I think, than we're seeing.
It's a much later development, but
Yeah.
I think one of the pieces of this that really convinced me to actually start enjoying it, and enjoying it in a way that I wasn't expecting, was again that scene with Tom and Rand when they go in and they see Matt standing there and the dead family, and the way that was shot, made you had that moment. Even having read the books, made me think, hang on a sec, did Matt actually kill those people?
Matt slaughtered the family. Yeah, that's the initial impression. That's the impression the characters have.
Yeah, and then they fade sliding out of the shadows.
Yeah.
And then, Tom obviously throwing the knife, and the fade sliding back into the shadows and then coming out of a different shadow. And for me, this is why I had said I was glad they were skipping through a lot of the Tolkien-esque elements, because until you see the movement of the fade, what the fade actually is, it is just a Nazgul riding in front of a horde of Trollocs. And like even that shot of the hooded fade with the Trollocs on the at the ferry point, it was so Lord of the Rings. But seeing that movement, this is something that is unique to this world. It is something that is unique to this story. Yeah. And getting it visualized, seeing it on screen, and I was so happy because it is moving into telling its own story now, rather than those story beats that I can't unsee Tolkien in them.
Yeah.
But now things are being developed that are true to the world of the Wheel of Time, and that for me makes it a much more enjoyable experience.
Yeah, there's much more in this fourth episode: ambiguity and conflict and interesting development. Just take what's happening now with Lan and Moiraine and now Nynaeve. So it appears it's an interesting thing. Lan and Moiraine appear like an old married couple, and it's not entirely clear. They've made it ambiguous. Do they have a sexual relationship on the show?
Well, and see, I disagree here. I think they made
it's not ambiguous.
I think they made it very, very clear that they don't have a sexual relationship, because combined with when they're in the bathtub, and we got that shot of Lan's butt.
Right. And he's standing, I guess you would stand in front of somebody like that and kind of exposed if you were very used to that person and it's not a big deal.
It's quite a vulnerable way to be standing.
Yeah. Yeah. But, so, or if you're trying to seduce, or but you don't think there's any sexual tension in that?
No, scene. Because in the bathtub scene, it is a complete inversion of the usual male gaze of the woman's butt getting into the tub.
Yeah.
So it is a complete inversion of that. So I like that for a start. But secondly, they get in and it's clear that they are incredibly comfortable around each other. They have a bond, a connection, and they are comfortable. But it's not, she's not, oh, I'm going to seduce you, or he's there going, oh, and now, darling. None of that was it. It was, oh, neck,
But let's put it this way then. Let's just say their relationship, I compared them to an old married couple. They might even be closer than an old married couple. You know what I mean? Yeah. They know each other so intimately that they're almost like part of, because he feels what she feels, right? Earlier in one of the previous episodes, Nynaeve was saying, when Nynaeve was supposedly curing her, right, helping her stay alive by disinfecting the wound, and she said, okay, I know that you have some kind of bond, so when I do this, it's going to hurt, okay? And she presses and the pus oozes out and all that. Lan doesn't really react there at all. I thought that was he could have at least winced or something. There was a
No, but he's
lack of
stoic.
reaction. Okay, he's too stoic to wince, I guess. But
in-
here in this episode, Lan comes in. He says, "Oh, you always get like this when I drink too much." I loved how they're showing that bond more and more, and they're closer than an old married couple.
And the reason I don't think they are going to imply sexual tension between them is when they sit down, he sits next to her. They're sitting shoulder to shoulder.
Yes,
they're sitting very close and they're comfortable. And when she reaches out, it's there that it's the comfort to it. Whereas when you compare that to, because they contrast it very neatly to the green Aja and Warders,
right, where there's
and
clear,
that is much more a sexual relationship and polyamory. But it's very clear that those things are part of the green Aja.
Right.
The red Aja, no Warders.
Yeah. They don't like men very much there.
Because only women are allowed in their tent. And you go, right, okay. And then,
of course, you could have female warders too, but
well, it'd be interesting to see what the show does with that.
Yeah. I mean, there are female warders. They exist, I think, right? That's a thing. But anyway.
Well, how much are we going into spoilers from the book?
Yeah, we're not doing the rest of I mean, we could, but
but because they contrasted each of the Ajas, it gives, again, a subtle distinction between them, which I think I still can't get over the fact that they are all completely in their own colors and their tents are color coordinated. And I get it. I understand. But it doesn't have to be completely green and all green outfit.
It's a bit of a sledgehammer, yeah.
You can tone it down a wee bit. Green accents on things, that they always have green associated with them, but they're not draped head to toe in the color. But
like it's St. Patrick's Day in a bar here in the United States where everybody's wearing green. Not in Ireland, but here, yeah.
But you got a real sense of the different aspects of what the Ajas actually stand for. So a development of that concept. And again, this is one of the things, like when you first think of the Aes Sedai and you think of everything going on and what they're doing, you think Frank Herbert, Dune, and the Bene Gesserit. But now it's moving into more of a concept that gets developed in the books as something unique to Jordan. And again, this is one of the things that I like. So I like it. I like it when stories are their own things and aren't too obvious about the other aspects.
It's a great development. Yeah, it really is. And the character development too. It's just my big plus here is I really can't get over how so I was going with the whole Lan Moraine thing. So I agree with you actually. I think that they're more like they're very, very close. That it's hard to describe because there are aspects of it that do resemble a long marriage, but then in some ways they're even closer than that, and they feel each other's pain and they know each other's experiences and all of that. So that's there. But you have this other dynamic being introduced with Lan and Nynaeve, which is very interesting to me to watch this happen. It's the end of the show. It's not a coincidence, I think, that Lan is the one that Nynaeve is kneeling over, and in the process of healing him, heals everybody. Did she intend to heal everybody? Did she intend was it his wound that it seemed like that was what elicited?
That's the trigger.
That was the trigger that elicited her grief. So and they've been showing the two of them, having an interesting, exchanges, and he says to her, come join us because before Leandrin had said, come join us and have, you don't have to eat cold whatever, and you cold chicken. And Lan extends a much more genuine invitation when he says, you can come eat with us as long as you don't kick anybody into the fire, which is a great line because it shows a playfulness that's developing between them. It shows an understanding of each other's character. It shows a warmth that I enjoyed that. I thought that was great. So
I have three nitpicky things, and I describe them as nitpicky things because they are things that annoy me. They're most likely not going to annoy other people, but they bugged me.
Only
And
after you say what they are, then everyone will be, oh, yeah.
no, it's when Tom throws the daggers at the Fade, the Murloc,
Yeah. Yeah.
he reaches into his pocket to get another one. Now the thing is, underneath his jacket, you can see there's a he got one from there earlier,
Yeah.
but then he reaches into his pocket for it, and you go, why are you carrying an unsheathed dagger in your pocket that's going to go right through the lining of your coat and into your leg? And also, isn't that the pocket where you keep your spare change? Like, oh, I just put my hand in to get a cut. Oh God, I just cut all my fingers off. And maybe if I watch it back in slow motion and pay attention, he's not putting his hand in his pocket. But that was the impression I got from having watched it once normally. And I
Yeah.
just went, don't put daggers in your pocket. That's idiotic. So that was
Okay.
the first thing that I just went.
We can live with that one. It might have been he had a little like a holster there, or maybe he has a magic pocket. I don't know.
Daggers in the bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep your dagger out of your pocket.
The second thing that and again, nitpicky thing, and it's
Okay.
offset by something that happens just before, but it's when Nynaeve heals everyone.
Yes.
One of the big things about the magic is it's meant to be a weave,
Right.
not an explosion. And
Yeah.
she screams and apparently unconsciously creates weaves on all of these different people. You go, it's an explosion of magical energy. It looks very, very impressive, but
Right.
it wasn't what I had pictured about how magic actually works, that you weave the one power into a pattern, the pattern evokes an effect. Here
Yeah.
she screamed, lost control, exploded, and everyone got healed.
Huh.
I went, really? And yet, the scene where Logan gets out of the cage, where he's just standing there and the cage is melting down around him, and he just, I'm waiting, I am patient. This will happen. I'm not going to burst out and any of this frantic, violent motion. I'm just going to melt it down and then step. And I really like that to sell his character.
Uh-huh.
So there are ways that they are doing magic that they're like, and anytime you visualize something like this, there are going to be aspects of it that you like and aspects of it that you don't like. So for instance, when the Moiraine and the others, they talk about, it's like holding a cat in a bath because they can't see his power. And they make a whole point in the episode, women cannot see the male half of the one power.
Right.
And therefore, presumably, it would be equally true, men can't see the female half, except he sees Nynaeve's power. And you go, why draw attention to it?
Huh.
Why draw attention to it if you're going to have that scene shortly afterwards? But
Yeah.
But it could be he was feeling the invisible power and shielding his eyes from the invisible power that he was feeling.
It's a tough one because it's a visual medium, and you can describe things in books that don't work on screen, and they could have changed all of that to say anyone can see the weaving, and that would have been the easiest solution, I think, to just ditch the whole idea.
And it could turn out that maybe they can actually see his weaves, except the cage melted down without seeing the weaves, and because I thought it was from the perspective of the Aes Sedai, so they couldn't see it, and that could be me reading too much into it. But
yeah,
it's, if the Aes Sedai can't see the male weaves, you would think that the men can't see the female weaves, and you go, okay, so the viewer can see Nynaeve explode, but then you could have had Logian standing there and not react.
You could do it that way. Yeah,
and you could have the women, going, my God, this sort of stuff, and him looking slightly puzzled because he couldn't see it.
But that wouldn't have gone well with the scene, I think.
And yet you're
that sense of awe, that wonder, and you can't have a comedic guy off to the side going, "What's up with them?"
Well, not even, you wouldn't play it for comedy because you don't have to focus. You didn't have to put him in shot when that happened.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
Cut him out of the shot. He wouldn't have been in it. We wouldn't have seen him go, oh, like this. Yeah. That could have happened. And then he could have said something like, I felt that power.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You could do
you know,
that.
there are ways and means of doing it. I'm not running the show. I'm not directing the show. I'm not
It's a
telling them how
tough
to.
call. It's translating something that works well in a book to a visual medium that, and it may not work so well there. But I do like what they do in the intro to the show, with all the weaving going on there. That's kind of fun. You know what I'm talking about? The introduction,
Yeah.
uh, that you see at the beginning of the show,
You don't
where
think it's a little on the nose?
I like it. The idea of, because the idea of magic as weaving, is important, I think,
Yeah.
to the series, and it's something that would please fans.
And
So
you know what? And it's a beautiful intro sequence. It looks really nice.
yeah,
And it's fun and it's great. But it's
you
you
get a
sort
lot
of.
of the important concepts there with the colors and everything else. So
And again, no one is making a show to please me because that show would not please anyone else on the entire planet. Which is probably quite lucky that they're not making it just for me.
so did we
Um,
get all three? Did we got two of the three? I think.
um, I may have temporarily for what was the third one? There was
I don't know.
oh it's a problematic thing about the representation of the Tinkers, and
Uh-huh.
this may be uh, in part being culturally specific to Northern Ireland, but over here, members of the traveling community, a pejorative for them is Tinker. And
Right.
the fact that they've cast Irish actors and they're using Irish accents,
Yeah.
that in no, I know they are not being treated badly. We have profound statements coming from them. They're being treated with seriousness. They're
Right.
interesting and engaging and complex. It's not a stereotype that's just been wildly thrown out. In exactly the same way that I was talking about the fridging, that it's just because the structure is there, you have to look at it in the whole.
Hmm.
I don't think that it is intended in any way to be stereotypical representation of members of the traveling community in Ireland. But
Yeah.
I can't help have that reaction when I recognize the accent. The accents are not strange and startling to me.
Right.
Um, they're not foreign to me. Those are accents I readily recognize and are
Right.
normal
Right.
to me. And seeing them in that situation and how they're being portrayed and referred to as Tinkers. And I know that's how the book does it. It's one of those ones. It makes me slightly uncomfortable.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah, I get
I
that.
I don't expect other people to have the same problem. It's a culturally, and even other people from here might go, no, but AP, you're being too sensitive about it. You go, and that's absolutely fine. But it's
Yeah.
one of those issues. It is just, you get that it doesn't sit quite right. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's
Yeah.
no criticism of the showrunners. It's no criticism of the show, but it's an odd cultural thing that reflects my own personal viewing experience.
Right. Right. Well, and we've talked about cultural appropriation being the fancy term for this when we talked about Dune and that sort of thing, in different ways that it happens. And I do agree with you that there's nothing pejorative about the portrayal we're seeing here. And that probably matters, I think.
Well, I think it matters a huge amount.
Yeah, yeah. So there is that, and they do, and I have to confess that you're saying it now, and it makes sense to me because I paid less attention to the accents because there's quite a variety of accents that we're seeing in the show. But I think you're right. Now that I think back, they have a bit of an Irish lilt there, don't they?
A bit.
Yeah. So, but they do change them up some. I think they look like an interesting, diverse group.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Racially, they are a diverse group. It's people who have been bound together from across the world. It fits with the ethos of the show that we've seen so far, that the Aes Sedai are from every culture, even the people from Emmonsfield and the Two Rivers. We see that the world of the Wheel of Time, because of the breaking of the world and the diaspora of all of these people and the intermingling and movement of people all around, has resulted in a very multicultural makeup. And because it's so consistent, none of it stands out. It just feels normalized. And, that is a beautiful thing that they do. They normalize the fact that you don't have to have ethnic blocks. going, this country is this ethnic bloc, and unless you're a part of this ethnic bloc, you're not really a part of this country.
Right.
Country's
Right.
a geographical location.
Yeah.
People move.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are various ways to, I mean, in our previous discussion, there were some, I think, interesting comments in regard to this, where people pointed out that, look, if you have a place like Two Rivers, where with a population that's isolated for thousands of years, at least that's how it is in the book, you would expect there to be intermarriage over time, and that people would be, there would be less diversity in terms of skin tone and so on and so forth. But what we have here is, first of all, there are factors we don't know about, right? We don't know how much commerce there is between different parts of the world. That's not spelled out for us in the show. We don't know how much time has gone by since the apocalypse either. We don't know that. I know this is a post-apocalyptic, place, but we don't know how much, if it's thousands of years or how many. They haven't, I think, at least in the show, they haven't specified that yet. So there are various ways of explaining this that I don't think it's a big deal myself.
Plus, they also made reference to the fact that they go to Tarlin they go to the ferry place to go trading, and there's movement.
Yeah.
Because if it's a group of 500 people who have been living in isolation for 3,000 years,
Yeah.
they're all going to have gills and webbed toes.
Yes.
If you start with that smaller group and that's all of it, there obviously people have come from other places. They are on a trade route. They do talk about, they get news from the south, and people go and trade to other places. And oh, look, I've met so and so, and they came back. And there's movement of people. Mightn't be a huge amount of movement, but you try and deepen the gene pool every once in a while, so not everyone is paddling in the shallow end.
Yeah.
But on the whole, I remembered the other thing that bugged me a little bit.
Okay, there's another one. Okay.
Right. No, this is a problem that almost all fantasy TV shows, or even a lot of historical drama shows have, that are featuring like epic sort of stuff. The army running to attack the Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
And you go, it's 20 guys shot from a whole load of different angles.
It's a budget issue. Yeah.
None of them are in formation, and they're just running. Ah! Right. You were described as soldiers, not idiots. But even the moment before that, they hear the arrows. They all look up at the arrows. They all kind of get into position. They're looking at the arrows. The Aes Sedai looks at the arrows. She smiles. I got this. The Aes Sedai they're all shot with arrows. That's what happens there. It took so long. They hear the flights of arrows, and it takes so long for them to do anything. You go, those arrows would have killed them all. They would all be dead.
So what they're doing there is a lot of, they're trying to build up the excitement. Do
you remember Monty Python and the Holy Grail?
Oh no, the Lancelot scene.
Lancelot running at the back of the field, and they're like, what's this? And then it goes back, and it cuts to him at the back of the field again, running through. And it keeps doing that. And then suddenly and they look up, and he then just hits them. That's what happened. And I appreciate it is done for dramatic effect. It happens in action movies all the time. It's like, we're going to launch this thing. You were already dead. The thing already exploded. You've talked so long as the timer was going down, and it happens all the time. I get it. But given that they had spent so much time with, let's edit this really quickly, let's move through this thing, so it's like, now we're going to slow down time. Those arrows are spending a long time suspended in the air.
They should be here any minute now.
Do you want to cast a spell, Larry? Get your weave ready. Oh, there's no rush. To a cup of tea. And so battle sequences, particularly with magic, and particularly on a budget, and particularly in a TV show, they are difficult to do well. And I think they got across the spectacle of it very well.
Yes.
And they even had like some minor narrative moments in it where, one of the warders is using his shield to take the arrows to protect the Aes Sedai, because that's what warders do.
Right.
There were moments like that. And then Nynaeve shivs a guy again. So she's shivved a Trolloc, and now she shivs a guy.
Yeah.
This is a trained warrior charging her with a longer weapon, and he runs right into her to give her a hug so she can shiv him. That's not how. What, did he trip?
Well, she is armed with a braid, so Aside from these things, though,
But
and honestly, the battle sequence was not my favorite part of the show either, but it was okay. And I'm not expecting. I can get over the silly, the silly things that happen because I'm much happier with the character development, the relationships between the characters.
yeah,
I just see so much promise in this episode that I was actually really happy and very moved even at the end, thinking, yes, yes, okay, you guys can do this. I liked it. And even though you're right about Nynaeve, the way the healing is presented, I actually enjoyed the dynamism of that
yeah,
moment.
and that's the thing. There's a trade-off between
Exactly.
depicting something very faithfully or depicting something accurately, even that, because
Right.
even if they establish the rule that yeah, you have to, you go, well, in that moment she was unconsciously in an explosion creating the. There's ways you can talk and rationalize it, and it's fine.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a tension between doing something that is cool and looks. Let's face it, it looked cool,
Yeah. It looked cool. Yeah.
and doing something that makes sense in terms of the narrative cohesion and logic, and
Right.
that's fine. It's like the Shadow Logoth shadow being vomited out of Matt and creeping along the ground, and you go, does that, is that now infected that entire place, or is it going to disappear? Because they kind
Yeah.
of just left it. You go, it's a creepy crawly shadowy thing. If they
Right.
had showed the light hitting it and it then evaporating, and you go, oh, it can survive in the shadow, but it will, because it's away from blah blah blah. I don't know, don't
But it
care.
was effective how they showed it coming out of his mouth, and you know
Yeah,
that
and
he's
you go, the
possessed.
visual was cool.
Right.
In
Yeah.
terms of narrative logic, it makes no sense, but the visual was cool.
Right. Right.
And I forgive a lot of that in TV shows because that's why it's a TV show.
Yeah.
My expectations and what I think that is the baseline that they have to maintain,
Yeah.
it's not as high as say I have for literature, because I think literature needs to do it a lot better because you're creating it in your own head.
Well, I
But
think
this
too
is,
with the television, like you said before when we were talking, you're being carried along from one big moment to another, and you don't have time to think back. Wait a second, would that actually work? You're being thrust into the next scene, and it's boom, boom, boom. And here I appreciate the fact that I had time to pause and see these characters develop a little bit. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you're going to notice those things. Only most of us aren't going to notice them because we're just being shoved along, in
but and I will
show.
say something in defense of this, and it's a defense I have for a lot of the choices that they've made, is
Okay.
for someone who hasn't read the books, that is an amazing shorthand, visual shorthand to
Exactly.
explain what's going on with Matt. And
Matt.
I mightn't like it. Big deal. The show is not being made for me. It's being made for the millions of people that they hope that have not read the books,
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
want to buy into the show, as well as making sure that they are doing enough justice to the books for fans of the books.
That's a tightrope. That's a
And
tightrope right there. Yeah.
that is an extraordinarily delicate balance they're trying to maintain. So I
Right.
mightn't like it, I might think it's silly, but for someone who hasn't read the books or doesn't know anything about the books,
Right.
that explains why Matt is acting the way that he is, and it also shows that Tom is wrong. They've gotten the wrong idea,
Yeah.
and it has that ominous thing which adds to that shot of when he's with the dead family, that you believe he did it.
Right. Right.
Because if you hadn't had the shadowy stuff vomiting out of him and then on his
Right.
mouth, you would have assumed, no, he went in and found these bodies, because it's Matt, and
Yeah.
it's Matt, he's a good guy. It's like,
Right.
no, he's there's something wrong with him, and it's dark and it's shadowy and it's evil, because it's
Yeah.
stereotypical how you do that.
And they
And
had
it
just done the
works.
scene before too with Matt and the little girl and her giving him the little
Brigida.
doll. Yeah, nice name. And that was I thought an effective. Of course, Matt's thinking of his sisters when he sees this little girl, and so he has an immediate bond with her. And then to see her dead on the ground later, that had more of an impact, I think, because of how they handled that. So I
Yeah,
thought,
and you can see like the what I'd said about Perrin's arc and the mirroring of those things. You can
yeah,
see it with Matt here, and again mirroring. And funny enough, the joke about Matt and Rand being gay lovers in the
uh,
third episode, and here you
right,
have the two of them lying together, and Rand leads it out. I'm here if you need me. And
Yeah.
it was, no, you know why he said it's not that thing, but it had that lovely parallel of it's the mirror of the thing. And
Yeah.
I like they've done some really nice, clever things with this. And this is why when people say, "Oh, it's a horrible show," or "They're not doing this," or "I'm really worried about that," the level of care they've taken over it, the level of thought that's gone into it. Not everything is going to work maybe for you individually, just as it doesn't work for me individually. But I'm
Right.
not looking at this going, "They don't know what they're doing." They
Yeah.
clearly do know what they're doing. We're now halfway through the season. We have another 4 episodes, and that still is only wrapping up the first season. Think
Yeah.
of the very first season of Game of Thrones. Are you perfectly happy with
Mhm.
all of season one? Are every decision, every line of dialogue, every person they sort of conflated and they changed this thing? You know. But ultimately, when you consider, okay, let's leave off the last couple of seasons because no one likes those. But when you consider the rest of it as a sort of package, you went, even though it was different, even though it didn't quite do exactly the
Right.
things that were going on in the book, even though it wasn't how I visualized it, that whole package was actually enjoyable as soon as I let myself enjoy it.
Exactly. And it needs to be different. And now I think a lot of the things they did there that people might have been upset about are our favorite things about the show. So, and that could happen with Wheel of Time as well. So, and again, there's that tightrope, they've got big fans of this series, deservedly so, who want to see their vision on the screen, and it's not going to be. It's not going to be.
I have to
And they
admit,
also want to bring in the new people, so it's a tough tightrope to walk.
I did think of you at one point while I was watching the show, and it's when Tom was having the little company says, a Gleeman has to rest before a performance, and I went, great, there's going to be another song that's going to bug Philip.
Very funny. Yeah. Well, if he would recite it in Old English, I'd be fine with it. So,
Well, I think that we've had a fun discussion here. And I think both of us have come away from episode 4 going, a lot of the things that really grated on us in the first 3 episodes
yeah.
aren't there anymore.
Right.
A lot of the things that we were a wee bit iffy about maybe in the first 3 episodes, we're now getting that depth. And it's because the first 3 episodes were trying to introduce a lot, and
Yeah.
now we're easing into the story. And this is what we all want. So I'm very positive about the show. I think it looks like there's care, there's attention to detail, there's attention to some very fine detail in it.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of thought that's gone into it. And it's, costuming's good. It still looks really good. They have, for the most part, pretty amazing special effects and rubbish fights. But
Yeah.
even the choreography of the fights, when you actually had a close-up of people fighting, that was pretty well handled.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a general problem that a lot of shows have. And
Oh yeah.
how many extras can we hire and outfit, and how do we get them to run down through these trees and make them look like professional warriors and not a bunch of people who have just been handed a fake sword for the first time in their lives?
Yeah.
So I actually quite enjoyed it. It's very positive. I think you've been very positive about this one as well, probably more so than me.
It's funny because I thought with the first 3, you were actually being nicer for a while there than I was, but yeah, I think overall we're both in the positive camp at this point. So,
But I think it's because we act like yin and yang. That if you're too positive, I have to go negative, and
it
if you're
could
too
be,
negative, I have to go positive. We need to acquire balance, Philip. There's
Yep.
balance in the force.
Yep, just like Statler and Waldorf.
Thank you very much for joining me, Philip. Greatly appreciate your time. It's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the next one. The next one is going to be on your channel.
Yes, episode
so,
5. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for your continued support, and we'll see you in the next one.